Today is the 22nd of July 2022 on a Friday. It's currently 8:02 p.m. and in this voice note I'm going to be talking about going back into boxing and what I did to try start, because one of the things I realized is that before anyone starts boxing, especially if you have never gone into boxing, it may be quite daunting, especially because of the notion of boxing gyms. It's especially different to a lot of sports because I think every boxing gym is different. I think when I was a kid I used to box, and after stopping and going back into boxing in my 20s, even I was quite apprehensive to join a boxing gym because the culture of a boxing gym, which means the way they do things, is different. For instance, some boxing gyms may encourage a lot of pad work, a lot of maybe body sparring, maybe a lot of bag. Some maybe focus on weights, maybe just skipping, just running. And I wasn't really prepared on whichever convention this boxing gym around me and the local gyms around me was going to be like. So one of the things I did before even joining a boxing gym was trying to focus on my general fitness. Though I would say a 3-mile run is different to a 3-minute boxing bag session. It's different types of endurance, and so it's not necessarily directly transferable, but I think generally speaking, if you can run a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, you can do well. But then again, you don't need to do anything. You can just go to a boxing gym and say, hello, who do I speak to? Who's the boxing coach? Hi there, I'm new. Can you tell me what to do and how it's going to look like today? That's probably the quickest shortcut. But I think there's a lot of apprehension, and the notion is that because you don't know what you're going to be doing, you want to kind of prepare. That's what I had, where I wanted to just generally build up my fitness in a conventional gym where there's a lot of weights. In this particular gym I was going to, there was a boxing bag, so I just kind of went in because I knew everybody would focus on themselves and go home. There was no session, there was no direction, and because it was free flowing, because there was flexibility, I felt more confident going there before boxing gym. So I went on the boxing bag because as a kid I did do some boxing. I kind of knew the basic punches and combinations, though after 60 seconds of trying to be Mike Tyson I realized this is going to be a little bit harder than I thought, which is completely fine. And I had the expectation of potentially gassing out very quickly because I didn't know how to control my stamina at that point, especially after stopping for many years. Now, one of the things I would probably say for anyone who may be completely new is maybe start wherever you can and confident in, because the sustainability probably makes the most sense for anyone who wants to get the most out of boxing. Going to boxing for 6 weeks is great, but going for boxing for 6 months is better. And if you can increase your confidence and build a foundation of confidence, whether that's maybe watching some YouTube videos and then trying to replicate whatever they're doing, but obviously not hurting yourself. Now I know the convention might be doing something you don't really know, and not being observed by a coach isn't the smartest thing, but I would probably argue against that because, again, going back to the sustainability, if you go to a boxing gym and you feel out of place and you don't feel good, you're never going to go to that boxing gym again, and potentially you might think about that kind of thought and duplicate that thought and replicate that thought to every other boxing gym around you, and then you just stop going boxing. So yeah, I watched some videos on YouTube. One of the YouTubers I've seen is Tony Jeffries. He's an ex-Olympian for Great Britain, and that is definitely a good notion to start off. I think, again, being an Olympian, being a pro boxer, he's achieved sort of the highest of the high as an amateur, and he did retire quite early because of an injury, but now he makes a lot of how-to videos. But there's a lot of boxing coaches who teaches very basic but very useful information, so starting off there would be useful. Now, finding a boxing gym once you've developed your fitness, and again, you don't need to run 3 miles. There's plenty of people who can't even run half a mile where they can go to a boxing session. I've seen a lot of people who are out of weight just purely based on appearance and body fat. I could see that, yeah, a lot of people are out of shape, but again, they go there and they probably do even harder work than people who are probably more in shape, which again comes down to mentality, which again is probably the branch of the sport of boxing, especially because it's very individualistic. It's not an 11-man sport like football. It's not anything to do with any of your teammates because it's just you and yourself. So going to a boxing gym, what I did is tried going on Google, and then I just wrote boxing gyms near me. Once you put your location on, you can find the nearest gyms near you. And one of the things I looked out for was probably to find if they are certified and an amateur boxing gym. So if a boxing gym just says boxingclub.com, I wouldn't have too much confidence, because being in an established amateur boxing club at least in the UK, you'd follow regulations and stipulations. So I know that they've gone through the structure of a business to a charity to whatever the case is to becoming an amateur boxing club, because then a lot of the amateur boxing clubs are made up of volunteers, and volunteers clearly have no incentive financially. So I think they're definitely doing it for just the love of the sport. But again, that's not always true. You could obviously always look at reviews if the boxing club has been around for a long time, or you can obviously try find anyone and anything related to that boxing gym online, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, and just trying to see if anyone's ever been in that place and seeing what they said, maybe contacting them as well. Probably the best thing to do also is actually call up the boxing gym, see who you talk to, just introduce yourself and say, I want to get into a class, what days are available for my level. I'm a beginner, I'm an intermediate, I'm a pro, and I would like to understand the price and just what we're going to be doing usually. Once you find the day and the name of the boxing coach, you would attend. And then one of the things I'd probably advise is having your gear in place, which again, in the UK at least, you have a lot of outlets which, like Sports Direct for instance, very cheap, and the brands you can focus on, to be honest, ranges from Lonsdale to Reebok, and you've got more expensive gloves, but to be honest, it really doesn't matter as long as you look at the ounces. So ounces indicate the how big your gloves are. I'd recommend anything from 12 to 16. So 16 are probably really the big ones that are used for sparring, if you care about that in the future. And your boxing coach won't probably allow you to spar with anything less, because the smaller the glove is, the harder the punch is effectively. And so in theory, the reason you have 16 ounces is because it's bigger, it's softer when you punch, and you don't want to obviously hurt your opponent. Though 8 ounces obviously gives you the ability to be quite quick with your hands because there's less weight on your hands. But I would recommend 12 ounces just for general boxing bag training. And if you do want to eventually go into sparring and you kind of want to use your own boxing gloves for sparring, you can get 16 ounces, or your boxing gym may give you your 16 ounces. Once you have that, you want to get some water, a skipping rope. You want to get some boxing shoes. I think unless the boxing gym doesn't have a specific rule, my boxing gym, now that I found out, is you can't actually go into the boxing ring that they have without some boxing shoes. So I had to get some boxing shoes. I had some hand wraps as well. I had some just sports gear. So once I arrived with my boxing gear, maybe 15-20 minutes early, I think that's always better, because that allows you to actually get the vibe of the gym. Now what I mean by that is, when you enter, for instance, an office place, you kind of understand whether it's loud, it's quiet, and then you kind of adapt to the vibe. So if it's quite loud, you're a bit more confident. Whereas if it's a bit more quiet, you're kind of just sussing out everybody and seeing who is the loudest, who's the coach. And actually, a lot of the times you can kind of see the previous class. So whoever the previous class is, you can kind of see how they're training. It's quite primitive. Again, it's what people used to do back in the day. You've got a lot of history, a lot of rich history within boxing. I think it definitely helps with the likes of Muhammad Ali, who've got a lot of personalities in the heavyweights, such as Mike Tyson to Muhammad Ali, and then welterweight, such as Floyd Mayweather, for instance, Ricky Hatton. But again, depending on where you're from, you may have some biases. But the great thing is there's so many different styles in boxing. So if you want to get into that kind of stuff, whether you're left or right-handed, whether you're tall or short, I think at the end of the day, it's all up to how you fight and how you perceive the best way to effectively fight. Whether you think you're a counter-puncher, which is effectively waiting for your opponent to punch and then you punch back. Whether you're quite tall and then you can kind of be an inside fighter or an outside fighter. So if you are tall, going back to that point, you'd maybe just want to use your jab and don't let your opponent to come in close. If you're a little bit shorter and you're fighting a lot of taller fighters, then you'd want to obviously get inside, because the advantage is to the taller person because they can punch from a further place. Whereas a shorter person has an advantage because he has or she has shorter arms, so could probably execute an uppercut a little bit easier than a tall person. So that's probably the first episode, I would say. I'm probably going to upload this on YouTube, probably put up some stock footage and see see how it goes, to be honest. Yeah, there you go. This is my first episode done.